School breaks out in a few weeks. If that sentence just made your stomach drop, then this is for you. I'm Marcie Shaoul, this is The Long Game, and this episode is about the summer holidays, which for many co-parents is not a season of rest. It's 6 to 9 weeks of compressed logistics, unexpected changes, competing plans, and the constant low-level stress of managing two households across a stretch of time that was never designed with separation in mind. So, if that's what summer feels like for you, I want to do two things today. First, I want to name the thing most co-parents get wrong about summer planning. And second, I want to give you a framework that makes 6 weeks manageable, not perfect, but manageable. So let me start with the mistake. The mistake that almost every co-parent makes, and I include myself in this in the early years, is planning what they want and then trying to make the other parent fit around it. Now, I know that sounds funny because I know your summer matters too. I know your plans, your holiday, your time with the children are legitimate and important. And this isn't about putting your needs last. It's about what happens when two people plan in isolation and then collide. Because when two parents plan their summers in parallel without any structure, what the children get is a logistics battle. They become the subject of the negotiation rather than the center of the plan. They hear about changes last minute or through a stressed parent or via a text that arrives in the middle of their holiday, and nobody wants to experience that. And the thing that was supposed to be joyful, the summer, becomes the highest stakes season of the co-parenting year, even more than Christmas. Now, there's a version of this that shows up almost every year. One parent books flights, the other does dates that doesn't suit the other parent, then tells the children about the trip, and then only mentions it to the other parent last minute. And from their side, it feels efficient. But from the other parent's side, it can feel like being handed a decision that's already been made. Now, they're not planning a summer together, even loosely. They're reacting to one. And whatever tension that creates tends to land on the next decision and the one after that. I'm not telling you this to assign blame. Almost every separating parent has done some version of this, usually without meaning to. It's what happens when there's no shared structure to plan inside of. Planning alone starts to feel like the only option that's actually moving forward. And I want to change that for you. So here is the framework. The framework I use with clients is built around one principle. Plan the structure first, the content second. Let me explain what I mean by that, because the distinction matters more than it sounds, like it should. Structure is the skeleton. It's dates, it's transition points, it's who has which weeks, it's what happens at the school gate in September and what information needs to be exchanged to get there. This is the conversation that needs to happen before you book anything, and it needs to happen in writing, not just in a conversation that drifts into negotiation, but in an agreed document that both of you have signed off, because content is everything inside the structure. Your holiday, their holiday, the activities, the friends, the late nights, the early starts. Once the structure is agreed, the content is yours to fill. And here's the part that tends to land as a relief. You don't need to consult the other parent on every detail, especially when it's happening on your bit of the holiday, because the structure's already holding it. And that's worth saying plainly, because I know that some of you watching this are thinking about a summer that's not very far away and where there's no agreed structure in place yet. It's not too late to put one together, even a simple one, even with short notice. But I'll also say this, if your summer has already started without a structure, this is exactly the conversation worth having before next year. So write it down in September whilst this summer is still fresh, rather than waiting till next June to remember, oh, watch that video with Marcie, and actually my summer was really stressful. The mistake everyone makes really is trying to do content and structure at the same time. So every decision that you're making really becomes a negotiation, And, 6 weeks of that is pretty full on and exhausting for you and for your children, who can feel it even when nobody is saying a word about it. Let me give you a sense of how this plays out, because I think this might be familiar to you. I worked with a parent who had spent 3 summers in a row in a state of low-grade conflict. Not explosive arguments, just that kind of draining back and forth over plans and days and hours and pickup times, who said what. Eventually, they sat down and wrote a simple summer structure agreement, nothing complicated, just dates, weeks, transitions in writing, agreed by both parents in advance. The agreement wasn't perfect. The other parents still changed things from time to time, but here's what shifted. Because the structure existed, those changes were deviations from a baseline. They weren't the baseline itself. And here was something solid underneath the inevitable wobbles. And the children of those parents had a calmer summer, not just because the co-parenting relationship was suddenly fixed, but because the logistics stop spilling into every single day. And that's the summer structure. And it's available to you in whatever holiday, wherever your co-parenting relationship is, whether it's warm or civil or barely functioning at all, because it doesn't require the other parent to be easy. It just needs the structure to exist. And you can be the one who puts it forward, even if you're not sure the other parent will engage with it properly, because a structure that's half allowed still gives the children more stability than no structure at all. Now, even with the best structure in place, timings will change, plans shift, requests come in, Auntie June suddenly getting married, last minute changes happen from both sides. So let's talk about how to handle those, because this is where most of the actual stress lives, even for parents who've done everything right with the structure and with the planning. Firstly, have a process, not a conversation. So agree in advance on a cold January day, ideally, or maybe even at the start of the summer, how changes are going to be dealt with, how they'll be responded to. Not every change needs a conversation, but here's another simple framework that you can use. Requests are made in writing at least 72 hours or 48 hours in advance, except in genuine emergencies. Responses will be within 24 hours. And if a request can't be accommodated, a reason is given and an alternative can be offered. That is not a legal contract. It's just about mutual respect. It's shared understanding that removes the need to negotiate every single time something moves, because it takes the heat out of the moment, because the moment already has a process attached to it. It also does something quieter, but just as important. It stops every request from feeling personal. And when there is no agreed process, a last-minute message from your co-parent can really feel like a test or a power move or a sign that they don't respect your time. And when there's a process, the same message is just a request going through the steps that you've both agreed to. The content hasn't changed, but the meaning attached to it has. Secondly, separate the kids from the logistics. When something changes, when a plan shifts, when a request comes in, the children don't need to know until it's settled. Not because you're hiding anything from them, but because you're the adults, and because involving them in unsettled logistics is exactly what makes a summer feel unstable for them. Once it's agreed, tell them warmly, tell them simply, something like, the plan's changed slightly, here's what's happening now. Not, your dad has changed things again. The first gives them the information, and the second gives them a side to be on, and that's a weight no child should ever be asked to carry. This one takes a little bit of practice, especially if you're frustrated in the moment, because the instinct is to explain why a change happened, to make sure that the children understand it wasn't you and it wasn't your fault, is completely human. But children don't need to understand whose fault a change is or where it's come from. They need to know what's happening now and that the adults around them have it handled. The rest is yours to carry, not theirs. Thirdly, have a contingency that's yours. So when plans do change at the last minute, and at some point they will, Have a backup that doesn't depend on the other parent at all. Know what you'll do if they don't show, or know who you'll call, know where you take the children if the plan falls through. This isn't about expecting the worst. It's not about being blindsided. It's about not being blindsided when something shifts. A parent who isn't blindsided stays regulated, and a regulated parent has a good summer with their children, regardless of what the other parent does or doesn't do. That line is worth sitting with for a second, because actually it's the whole point of everything I've just said. Your summer doesn't have to depend on someone else's cooperation. You can build it so it doesn't. And that's not a small thing, especially if you spent the last few summers feeling like your plans were always one phone call away from falling apart. While we're on the subject of last minute changes, let's talk about handovers, because summer tends to multiply them. More trips, more swaps, more moments where you and your co-parent are standing in the same place at the same time. Keep handovers short, keep them about logistics, not about relationships. A handover is not the moment to raise a concern about how the summer is going, or to ask why a message wasn't answered, or to mention something that's been bothering you for 2 weeks. Save that for written messages or your co-parent meetings, where there's time and appropriate space to think before responding. In the moment, it's simple. It's the bag is here. This is what they need. This is where they're up to in their swimming. They need their armbands. They need their rubber ring. Those kinds of things. And notice the tone, because your kids will. Children notice the tone of a handover almost more than anything else in a day. A calm, brief exchange tells them the adults have this under control. A tense one, even a quiet tense one, tells them that something's unresolved, and they're going to carry that with them into whatever comes next, whether that's a flight, a sleepover, or just an ordinary afternoon. And finally, the thing I want to say about summer that almost nobody says enough: give yourself permission to enjoy it. Not every moment, not in spite of everything that's going on, but just enjoy yourself. This is 6 weeks that your kids spend with you, and they're yours. And the time that they're with you is not shared, it's not negotiated. What you do with them, the memories you build, all of that sits within your own circle of control, and nobody else gets a vote in that. Summer isn't a problem to be managed. It's a time that you have with your children. Whatever the circumstances, that's the entire point. So if part of you has been treating summer as though it's something to survive rather than something to actually live, that's understandable given everything that sits underneath co-parenting. But your kids won't remember the logistics, right? They're going to remember whether you were present. The structure exists so you can be. If you want to go deeper into this, a full summer planning template, the language for writing a seasonal co-parenting agreement, and what to say when the other parent won't cooperate with the plan, all of that lives inside the co-parenting method program. The link is below this video. 6 weeks, 2 households, 1 regulated parent. That's enough. Subscribe for the next episode in this series, and I will see you there.